Calling someone bigoted does nothing but make them defensive. That's their fragility. Not my problem. Once someone has gone on the defensive, nothing you say will get through. It doesn't matter if they're on the defensive. Someone who has made up their mind will not change their mind. They could be on the offensive and you could say, hey, stop, you made your point, and they're going to continue being hateful. So stop trying to worry about the fifis of someone who's a terrible human being. Hello to the world, it is Taylor and welcome to another episode of Dwhell On It. Thank you so much for coming to another episode, or welcome to your first episode. Dwhell On It is a series where I answer your questions about my lived experience as a trans woman. If you have any questions of your own, please feel free to throw them in the comments or send them to me by DM. Depending on the platform you're looking at, that's where the options come from, whether they're the comments on YouTube or you can DM on Reddit or Instagram or whatever. And certainly feel free to stay involved, get involved. Please like if you like the content, share this with your friends too, because the only way for this message to reach more people is by you doing that type of work, by giving it to other people to see. So please make sure to share, and if you haven't yet, most importantly, please subscribe so that you can see new episodes as they get updated. Before we get started, I always like to begin with a visual description for anyone who is visually impaired or perhaps only listening right now. And so with that, I am again in my living room / gym / office, blonde hair, naturally wavy going past my shoulders, and I am wearing just a purple athletic sweater. Otherwise, yeah, no, white, 6'1", totally naked face. If anyone's paying attention to the piercings under my eyes, as I always point out, I've got 3 piercings, small, medium, large, going outward on my right eye to a cluster piercing on the top of my right ear, and also a nose piercing and 2 stud piercings. But yes, I just bugged the small and medium ones, so if they look a little irritated, it's because they are. When they flare up, they get mad. You have to give them attention, and such is life. In the description, I want everyone to please make sure to note 3 things. There are 2 fundraisers. One is Run for Women, one is Walk for Muscular Dystrophy. At this point, there's about 1 month left until both race days, June 5th and June 11th respectively, and I'm trying to reach $1,411 for each. So please, if you have not contributed yet, please jump in there, throw a few dollars down if you have any to share, and get a tax receipt for that as well. And again, as I mentioned, please share those fundraising links as well too. One supports women's mental health and mental health awareness and women's wellness programs out of Mood Disorders Association in Manitoba, and the other one is supporting Canadians who are experiencing any of up to 160 neuromuscular disorders, and so it helps support them, and it supports their families and their support systems, and also it just helps, when it comes to advocacy and research and whatnot for all of those programs too. So please take a moment to jump in there for that. In the description is a reference to Letters for Trans Kids. That is a campaign to share messages of encouragement and support for trans youth who are under siege for legislative attacks, and especially with the way that things have been directing in the West as of late. This isn't ending anytime soon, and so trans youth are an incredibly vulnerable community. If you can take a couple moments to, 1, watch my video, please listen, and hopefully that inspires you about why to act, and then 2, please act. So the video is going to be right up here. Please make sure to take a look at it, give it a watch. It has no reason to not inspire you to act, and include a message of your own on social media. Remember, hashtag Letters for Trans Kids, and help, right? Help. As much as we appreciate the passive support, you're here, you're watching this, that is support in principle. We need you to help act, please. And again, please share that video as well. I'm going to forego the grab bag this time because I had some lovely experiences over the past week and change, let's put it that way. As you can tell by the description of this week's video, that I have some storytelling to put together. So what I'm going to do with that storytelling is I'm going to take a lot of feedback that I've received, rather focused, but still sporadically, but speak kind of as a whole. And the reason for this story, it ain't about me. This is about what happens when, is pretty much what my storytelling is going to be for. My message to you, the listener, is to recognize what is happening when people allow frustration, hate, anger, ignorance to be a pilot, and then it allows significantly more harmful behavior such as bigotry and transphobia to carry along because you're so mad. right? So the message that I want all of my viewers and my listeners right now to take away from this is to address something that is essentially called the bystander effect. What the bystander effect is, to simplify things, is people that allow a negative behavior to happen in their proximity because they believe someone else is there already who likely will do a better job to address it. And that is part of the reason why harm continues to happen, because everybody expects somebody else to work, which means someone's also expecting you to work. Starting with intention of positive, let's talk inclusion. I use an acronym 2SLGBTQIA+. I'm not the only person on the planet who uses that, certainly. And as a matter of fact, this was agreed upon with my own personal experience when I was volunteering with Sport Manitoba on the Two-Spirit, Transgender, and Non-Binary Plus Equity and Inclusion Committee. Again, not exclusive to Sport Manitoba, but that is my personal experience with that. And I learned a lot from that too, because lots of organizations, even including in Canada, well, they'll do things like put 2S at the end, or they won't include an I or an A, or so on. And having individuals on that committee who helped advocate for reasons for that method of inclusion certainly helped me validate the reasoning for that as well. Not like I needed to get sold on it, but I'm like, yeah, no, totally, this makes sense. I receive questions quite frequently, as a matter of fact, about what does especially the 2S stand for, because not a lot of people are aware of Two-Spirit individuals, and that is what 2S stands for. In Manitoba, at the minimum, I feel it is incredibly important to put 2S at the beginning as an extra recognition for the Indigenous community, for the amount of hostilities that have been put upon the Indigenous community, especially in North America. From my experience, I can't speak on any other places of the world, but I imagine it's a pretty similar story. But it is not unreasonable to ensure that there's visibility for communities who have been pushed silent and with attempts of erasure, all within our own, if not lifetime, within our own appreciable history, whether it's from a generation before us or a generation before us before us. It's been happening around us, and so the least that we can do is assure visibility. I'm not Two-Spirit. I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is Treaty 1 territory, but I do very much understand that Two-Spirit is part of Indigenous culture. And so what Two-Spirit is a modern term used by some Indigenous North Americans to describe Indigenous people in their communities who fulfill a third gender, ceremonial, and social role in their cultures. The term Two-Spirit was created in 1990 at the Indigenous Lesbian and Gay International Gathering in Winnipeg, Treaty 1. That's mostly off of Wikipedia. It's easy to look up. Two-Spirit, TWO-SPIRIT. Feel free to further research about Two-Spirit individuals. Someone also asked in a similar nature if that is not under the trans umbrella. Because it is cultural, it is not my place to say yes or no, because I can create an argument about how it is under the trans umbrella, and I can also create an argument about how it is not under the trans umbrella. So the answer is, a person whose identity is Two-Spirit can tell you if they find themselves in the trans community or not. It is best for them to answer that, not for me to create a blanket on all of that. I stands for intersex individuals. Using American stats, 1% of Americans are intersex. It's 1 in every 100 people. You can be intersex and not know. Intersex does not necessarily mean that there's a physical difference compared to what is expected. You can be intersex and have no clue about it. Intersex individuals deserve a lot of recognition and representation that continues to get suppressed when acronyms like LGBTQ stop. Intersex individuals are 100% valid, and including them in representation is so important. A is controversial, oh my goodness. But in the spirit of this, let us discuss asexual individuals and aromantic individuals. There's so much emphasis on allosexual individuals, and what allosexual is the norm, to expect an attraction to another. Alloromantic individuals, there's an expectation to fall in love with others. It's not always like that. And I'm not saying that is an exclusive lot, because asexual, aromantic can absolutely be in conjunction with other identities as well. I've said before, I'm a demisexual individual. I am a trans woman, a lesbian, and demisexual. And that doesn't exclude the validity of one or the other. It is entirely possible to be cisgender, heterosexual, and aromantic. And that individual is just as valid and welcome into the 2S LGBTQI plus community. One thing I'm not gonna lie is I wonder where the P is, right? Because you see pansexual mentioned frequently. I have not seen, like, publicly an acronym of that length including P. And, you know, if someone shared something like that with me, I'd be more than happy to look into a way to incorporate that. But that is the magic of the plus. The plus means there is so much more out there, and we want to assure that you are seen, your identity is valid too. Representing these communities as their uniqueness expects is so important, because it does two things. One, it creates questions. Questions create education. And two, it does not minimize the diversity while also not minimizing the uniqueness of different individuals. For example, I am not personally a fan of something like GSM, gender and sexual minority, or GRSM, gender and romantic sexual minority. For starters, if you do a little history into the psychologist that started the term GSM, not really a fan of that individual's ledger. Google it. Let's just put it that way. I really don't feel like using that language. Just Google it. Nonetheless, though, I understand the value of having things short, because that's kind of your way of saying, hey, right, why don't we just lump everybody together? Except what that is actually saying, if you look into the subtext behind it, is it's a really, really nice way of saying other. Tell me how gender and sexual minorities is a different language than other. You can't say other because other's offensive, right? Hi, we're the others, well, you're the normies, right? That's not how it works. And so advocating to support a smaller and smaller and smaller acronym is trying to remove the visibility and just lump everybody who is not a cisgender, heterosexual, alloromantic, allosexual individual. They're all others. Not cool. And I'm not going to subscribe to that act. I will continue to stand against that. And for anybody who uses an argument about how it's long or complicated or this or that, but will be more than happy to say, you can't dead name someone, you can't misgender someone, that's not right. You're arguing respect, but you refuse to broaden your scope. You refuse to adjust your own habit because you think it's silly. Pick your battles. Representation is important for visibility. Visibility is important for inclusion. And if you continue to mute the visibility, you are not helping. You are actually part of the problem. And that said, there was an individual who chimed in something similar. That sure is a lot of letters and numbers and symbols you have there. You're muddying the waters. No, your waters are muddy. Don't get upset that if I choose to walk past your existing muddy water, because it's not difficult for me to say 2S LGBTQI+. It's not really complicated, and it's not exactly consuming time. Any argument that a person makes about how it's difficult or whatever, wrong. Means your level of effort and commitment to inclusion stops at your comfort. And that is not how inclusion works. That is not how diversity works. That is how segregation works. That is how exclusion works. And choosing to validate being exclusionary is a you issue, not a me issue. What I ended up doing is, as I've mentioned previously, I consolidated a lot of, let's call it feedback. Right? So before I get too deep into anything else, I'd like to give people who are new to this channel a rundown about who I am as an individual. And for anyone who's familiar with me, a little reminder of how I like to create solutions out of controversy. Let's put it that way. I'm not the type of person who's going to be under attack by a bigot or a transphobe and then just be like, oh, that's the internet just being rude. What I do is I create solutions with that. So for example, if I'm going to go ahead and get attacked by a group of individuals who feel they have a safe space, I'm going to take that information and be visible with it for people who operate that space, whether it's our city, our province, our country, little areas of the internet with moderators, whatever. Be like, this is the space that you house. You insist on something else, you should do something about that. I can handle it. It's a burden, I'm not gonna lie, but I can handle it. There are people who can't handle it. And that's why I take those punches on the jaw and redirect them to the people who have the opportunity to create meaningful change. If I took those punches on the jaw and then ran, all that does is it validates the abusers and be like, yeah, I punched hard enough, therefore I won. This isn't about a power struggle. This is about me standing in the face of abuse and saying your abuse is not valid here. Your abuse is being allowed in a place that it is not promoted as accepted. And I'm going to take your abuse and I'm going to bring it to people who may or may not care, because I'm telling you that I don't care. What I've also done with this feedback as well is I've consolidated a lot of it, and if it also appears to come across significantly more diplomatic than it did, it's because I edited it accordingly so that it comes across a little more palatable. It was a little incoherent. I made sure to bring it down so that it's just easier for people to digest about the type of conversations that would be sent my way. And this isn't exclusive to me, for the record. The reason and what inspired me to do something like this is because lots of trans individuals get assaulted for existing. They get assaulted for existing, and they also get dogpiled for speaking up against transphobic abuse and bigotry, because people don't stop that bigotry. They allow it. They allow their frustration of a situation to overshadow the hate, the suppression, the oppression, the abuse. They validate their frustration, which means that they're just going to allow every other form of intolerance as well. I know it's a bit of a trope, but it's like intentionally misgendering Caitlyn Jenner even though you don't agree with her policies. I am not a fan of Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner is just as valid of a trans woman as any other trans woman out there. I don't need to attack her identity. I don't need to belittle her policies or beliefs, because she's allowed to have those policies and beliefs. That's the miracle of where she lives. I certainly wish that it wasn't exploited as it is. I'm not gonna lie. But that's not a me problem. That's a right to your counselor problem. That's a right to your leaders. That's a right to your MLA, your MP, your senators, your whatevers. That's an issue that you take with people who can create the decision. But to take away a person's right to do what they have the right to do, that's crossing a line. And that's a line that you are not in charge of controlling. Unless you want to parade yourself as some sort of gatekeeper, you are out of line. You are a problem. You are a problem. Your inability to cope with your emotions is a problem. You are a problem. Your dissatisfaction is your problem. And I don't think enough people recognize that. So let's talk TERFs. I don't know if I'm going to read through this in full or I'm going to interrupt things. So let's just run with this here. Why are you always sharing your political agenda? Well, I'm going to stop right there. I have a value in social justice. This isn't my political agenda. And for the record, I've done a little understanding about this person as they were coming down on me rather hard. I'm going to gently suggest that their demographic suggests that they should appreciate the reason why they're allowed to have a voice is because people, when she was much younger, were going after their political agenda too. Considering the presumed age of this individual and the presumed gender of this individual, that person should be very grateful that they had an opportunity, if not other people speak for them with their political agendas. So it sounds to me it's not about why am I sharing what is a political necessity. It's that you got yours and you really don't care about anyone else. So I can't answer why am I always sharing my political agenda, because I don't have an agenda. I have rights and I'm fighting for them. And it'd be great if you chose to do that too. Why is this even allowed? Because I have the right to do that. I worry that PC bias will lead to a destructive and toxic environment. And you see where I'm going with that. Everything's fine until it's not, right? I guess we can rewind a little over 60 years, but you know, you'd only be a baby by then, and You probably wouldn't understand as much as you do nowadays, but that's exactly what I was talking about. You got yours, which means that you really aren't all about inclusion. You're about making sure that you're happy. There's a clear bias which didn't exist before. Well, the bias isn't exactly a bias, it's an understanding and acceptance and inclusion, right, is what it is, right? And so if the bias means that more people are getting allowed to be considered as valid individuals, and you're still behind, that's not any of our problem. That's your problem. I hope there's still enough objectively to allow this issue to get addressed. I am the objectivity. And the objectivity is people have a right to be included. And if you don't agree with that inclusion, that's you to educate yourself on, not us to minimize ourselves for you to feel more comfortable. That's objective. I'll fight for social justice, but I don't support assholes. So regardless of your opinion of me, and I know that I'm the farthest thing from a princess, and that's not my intent either. I'm very sorry, for the record, for anyone who doesn't like my style. I am so sorry that I stand with confidence. I'm so sorry that I speak with conviction. I'm so sorry that I use facts and realities and objective reasoning, and it gives reasons that are difficult for you to understand or overcome. That has nothing to do with me being an asshole, because I know the difference between being an asshole and being confident. This isn't about pride. This isn't about cockiness. This isn't about nothing except for the fact that I stand for trans rights and I stand for equity. And if you don't like that and you want to call me an asshole because of that, I deal with so much worse on a daily basis. If you truly believe, you think whatever words flutter out of your lips have any impact on my life, you are really exaggerating how important you think you are to my day-to-day. I stand for trans rights, and I stand with conviction because there are trans individuals who can't. There are trans individuals who don't have the assurance and the self-confidence to stand for a safe space where they have a right to be. They don't have the confidence and the composure to say, I own my space. I am valid where I belong, and I belong anywhere I want to be. That is how I operate my day-to-day. And if you don't like it and you want to call me an asshole, go ahead. You're not changing the fact that I stand for trans rights, and I stand for the people who can't do the same thing. You don't fight for social justice. You fight for whatever serves you with least discomfort. There is a big difference behind that. Now let's turn it up to 11. Oh, shut up. Every post of yours drips pretension and I'm better than you and belligerent virtue signaling. How do you think this individual is going to be in terms of any sort of diplomatic discourse? Not worth the time. So let's continue. Please, for the love of God, shut up for once. The thing that's funny with that, anyone who's familiar enough with me on social media, especially over the past year or so because of how much I've got going on, rarely do I actually talk because I've got other things to do and other places to be. But if someone addresses me with a question, I will be happy to respond with an answer. If someone's going to ask me a question and I provide an objective response to that question and you want me to be quiet, then stop asking me the questions. You tell other women that enough, don't you? When it comes to the shutting up that is likely getting referred to, I have said numerous times to people who have had issues with me, take it up with someone who can do something about it. Take your concern to someone who cares, because I am not in a position to care that you don't like me. You are trying to silence anyone who dares criticize you. No. I share answers to their questions, or I take their bigotry and ask them to explain that. And if they don't have the ability to explain their bigotry because they understand how embarrassing it is to speak loudly about their hate, that is them silencing themselves. I give them the space to share their hate. That's not me saying, stop it. That's me saying, speak up. For the people who didn't hear you. You never engage in a meaningful way. I'm not going to get into a conversation about my existence or trans rights or validity or purpose or day-to-day values I'm not going to share time with an individual whose goal is to silence. So if you want something meaningful out of me, you have to start by being meaningful. Hey all, it's Editing Taylor live from my bedroom, so if we're getting a lot of ambient noise, I'm not fighting to fix it. There's a point at this point right now that I recognize didn't get addressed, and I feel it's really important to include, and that is, again, about you never engage in meaningful ways. Recognize conversations that happen against trans individuals and the hostility that comes with them. The dogpiling on trans individuals about, you're presenting stuff I'm not a fan of, all my friends, come on in, let's suppress, I hate everything you're doing, I hate everything about you, I hate you, but you're not providing any meaningful substance. It's not even irony in that. That is ignorance. That is willful ignorance of expressing the gatekeeping. The dogpiling that gets put on trans individuals to concede and bend a knee to be included in a community. The expectation put upon trans individuals to conform their values to match those of others, and then criticize the trans individuals for not being visible. And that's the other point too. I'm visible. I don't use anonymous profiles. I spent 39 years of my life in the closet, and when I came out abruptly, but I lived in the closet for so long because of the world around us, because of the bigots and the hateful people who felt that it'd be best to put me in a box. And there's no way that I would live a life of being my best self, yet also living in anonymity. I can't and won't do that. I came out to come out and stay out. And so being a visible trans woman every time and every place that I exist comes with controversy for existing. I don't know if enough people recognize the amount of energy it takes to exist anywhere, whether it's online, in the real world, wherever it may be. The criticism and the degradation that comes along with something as simple as, I like cats. It doesn't matter, you'll never be a real woman anyway. That is a real life scenario. That is a real thing. So if people want to go ahead and demand a meaningful conversation, a meaningful expression, a meaningful inclusion, then you must also create a meaningful space. How I choose to operate, how I communicate is deliberate. And for you to go ahead and expect an individual like me to meet your privilege really underlines your privilege. I'm not saying that every person who's not trans has the best time of their life. It goes without saying that people of color suffer racism on a ridiculously high rate. There's no question that people with visible disabilities get so frequently minimized, belittled, questioned of their worth. And then people with disabilities that you can't see get directly offended by people feeling that there's a safe space to talk negatively about people with disabilities around them. Not engaging in meaningful things for trans individuals is often deliberate because they might not feel that space is safe, is appropriate, or frankly worth the energy to share their thoughts. So I'd like everyone to just take a moment about that. Why doesn't so-and-so say something? Why isn't so-and-so participating? Why isn't so-and-so whatever? It's because so-and-so doesn't have you having their back when they need it. You call people TERFs and bigots to shield your tiny little mind from anyone else's opinion. Calling people TERFs and bigots is calling people TERFs and bigots. If you are a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist, and I call you a TERF because you are a trans exclusionary radical feminist, I'm doing nothing but sharing with you your values that you are presenting. If you don't like being called a TERF, then stop being a TERF. Same thing when it comes to being a bigot. If you don't like being called a bigot, if you don't like being called a racist, if you don't like being called a transphobe, then stop being a bigot, stop being a racist, and stop being a transphobe. Don't get mad at me for sharing with you what you represent yourself as. That's a you problem, not a me problem. Shut up and do some goddamn self-reflection. I do not operate without education. There is nothing that I do that I don't assess 15 times over. I am where and who I am because of self-reflection. The reason why I came out is because I looked at myself and said, I can do it. I wouldn't be here today without self-reflection. And if you don't like my confidence, that is a you problem, not a me problem. Because the last thing that I am doing is telling people to come down from where they are. But I am telling people to get out of my way if they're standing in front of me and stopping me from my goals. I don't know why you think TERF will upset me or anyone else. It's a meaningless, made-up word by trans women. It doesn't matter where the word came from, and I'm not saying it to hurt anyone else's feelings. If you do not show individuals that there is bigotry happening, they might not recognize it. I go anywhere, and it doesn't matter if it's an online space or a real world place. Everywhere that I go, I presume is transphobic until proven otherwise. And if someone is going to present themselves as a TERF, I will tell them that they are a TERF. And not for them, but for the people around. I've spoken about this before in one of my videos about how do you negotiate or address transphobes. Don't bother talking to a transphobe or a bigot. There's no point. When you are engaging with those individuals, though, you are talking to your audience, because the audience is the one watching the conversation, and then perhaps they might choose to inject themselves and offer support. However, most don't, because of the bystander effect. Because most people think that either I'm okay as I am, or someone else is going to speak up, or they are afraid of getting dogpiled on by people who are full of hate. People who are full of hate are so willing to express their hate upon others, believing they can do it without consequence. And you've got individuals who don't want to engage with that. And so they stand back and hope. They hope that everything will be okay without them, and hope that someone else will step in and say, hey, bigot, hey, TERF, you're out of line. And far too often that does not happen. Because the people who are that full of hate, the bigots, the TERFs, the transphobes, the racists, when they express their hate is violent and hurtful, intentionally hurtful. And many people can't cope with that. And that's why it continues to happen. Because the hateful and the hurtful are able to get away with it with minimal consequence. Whereas the people who they are hating and hurting would run, hide, or possibly significantly worse. So when I tell someone that they are a TERF, it is to make it clear that they are a hateful and hurtful individual. I don't care how it makes them feel, because the last thing that they care about is how I feel. I am not interested in worrying about the fee-fees of the hateful. How they feel is a them issue. That's as simple as it gets. So as soon as someone criticizes you, you turn to using slurs. TERF, for the record, is not a slur. Calling a TERF is not insulting a TERF, because a TERF is a TERF. It is a term that is a short form of a long word. Transgender, exclusionary, radical, feminist. It's a short form of a very accurate descriptor. That's not an insult. If you feel insulted from it, that's a you thing, not a me problem. It is not a derogatory word, and I'm not going to mirror it with other derogatory words, because there are words that are expressly derogatory and have no business being part of this conversation. But calling a TERF is like calling a bigot, calling a transphobe, and calling a racist. If you feel insulted by that, I'm sorry that you are not able to manage your emotions, but that's not mine to address. That's yours. You're assuming that people don't care for you because you're trans. If an ace or demisexual individual came to promote videos like you, they would be pushed back as well. Funny, I'm also demisexual. So regardless of that, what you're saying, you're being exclusionary. Regardless, it's not inclusive. And what's so funny is to use as an example. In this case, this one line was on Reddit. So the subreddit that I was in, to just think off the top of my head, was along the lines of an inclusive space to share opinions and values and wisdom and things that are important to you. Social justice and trans rights are important to me. If they're not important to you, that's not me to cater to, because the place is welcoming. The place says, hey, share what is important to you. Share your wisdom. Sounds to me like people are validating gatekeeping. That is why we continue to struggle in the world today, because far too many people feel inclusion is only good up to the point of their own acceptance, and they will present inclusion to the level of their tolerance. That's not how it works. The main issue with using TERF is that it seems it gets thrown out as soon as there's a disagreement. No, not at all. I call a TERF regardless. A TERF can agree with me about what we're having on pizza, and I would say, absolutely, who's paying for this, TERF? Because I'm going to let a TERF know that they are being a TERF at all points of being a TERF. There is no time in any of our lives where it is acceptable to take someone's bigotry and suppress it as long as it's not currently actively harmful, because it existing is harmful. There is a saying that if you watch 9 people have dinner with a Nazi, you are watching 10 Nazis have dinner. So it doesn't matter if there's a disagreement or not. If an individual is being a TERF, they will get recognized as a TERF. And if they do not like being seen as a TERF, then the thing to do is to stop being a TERF. It deflects from honest criticism. No, it doesn't. A TERF sharing opinion is not criticism. A TERF only speaks oppression. I am not going to cater to someone who does not validate my existence. The criticism is non-existent. The oppression is significant. It's a mean to shut down, which goes beyond the usage of this particular word. If you do not address bigotry, transphobia, racism at face value, in front of it, you give it space. Because what you do by not being loud against it or around it is let that bigoted individual be that bigoted individual, like, wow, I got away with my horrible beliefs, I'm still accepted. You not addressing hateful conduct, you not addressing hateful people and reminding that hateful person that they spend a portion of their day trying to remove the validity of other people. If you do not participate in stopping hateful people from being hateful, you give them space. That's a you problem to look at, not a me problem to cater to. Calling someone bigoted does nothing but make them defensive. That's their fragility. Not my problem. Once someone has gone on the defensive, nothing you say will get through. It doesn't matter if they're on the defensive. Someone who has made up their mind will not change their mind. They could be on the offensive and you could say, hey, stop, you made your point, and they're going to continue being hateful. So stop trying to worry about the fifis of someone who's a terrible human being. We do need to work on dismantling those views. Not everyone is at the point where they can even acknowledge that they have these views. They're not ready to deal with feeling guilty about it. That's a them problem, not an us problem. I'm not gonna worry about the fifis of hateful people because they're incompetent. Putting people on the defensive does not help in the slightest. Not really. Sometimes when people are on the defensive, they get to better understand about why they're on the defensive and can understand the situation a little larger. It does more harm than good. That's situational, and I'd like a citation on that. As I just mentioned, that you can get educated from being on the defensive. No one will be in the correct state of mind to work to change their ingrained bias when they're on the defensive. No. That's not how it works. Faith and integrity have nothing to do with offense or defense. They stand with their conviction because of their conviction. They're not going to get convinced whether or not they're feeling as if they're winning or losing. That's not how it works. So stop trying to cater to the position and power of individuals. If they are being hateful and hurtful, they're being hateful and hurtful, and you tell them that they are being hateful and hurtful, and you exclude them instead of allowing them to exclude others. What has helped me is talking with people where insults aren't getting thrown. Okay, that's common discourse. I acknowledge it works both ways. I have to be willing to come to the table without shouting insults. Yeah, I agree. That's how I tend to operate too, so I don't know what we're addressing here. And I'm fully aware of that. I'm not really interested in trying to piss someone off and then be like, okay, now that you're super mad, let's negotiate. Yeah, a little past that. I acknowledge that it's not the job of trans people, BIPOC, or gay people, or any other vulnerable group to coddle anyone. Now we're catching up. Who'd have thought? Oh yeah, that's right. It's not the responsibility of people who are under attack to go ahead and cater to the fifis of people who are being oppressive. It's not the oppressed's job to fix them. holy shit, this is just this amazing revelation. It's like the more that you typed, the more that you realize that, wait a minute, people who are under attack shouldn't be spending their energy to cater to the whims of the people who are trying to erase them. Let's talk about being exclusionary. As I mentioned earlier, an inclusive place to talk about issues important to us, dispense wisdom, and swap stories. What does this even have to do with being a lesbian? Most of the videos have zilch to do with lesbian issues. Define lesbian issues. Are lesbians nothing but a bedroom apparatus? Is that what a lesbian issue is? Or is it about, like, what's the popular thing? Axe or swords or something like that? Expressing feminism? Or is it like, falling in love with someone else and then moving in within a month? What are lesbian issues? What are lesbian exclusive issues? I want to know more about what lesbian issues are. Are you saying dating? Because if this is the case, it doesn't appear that this is something about dating. But if lesbian issues are exclusive to romance, well, you'd think that would just get promoted as such then, wouldn't it? I'm a trans woman, a lesbian, and a demisexual. My passion, aside from sports, is social justice. I share my passion should it inspire someone else. I don't expect it to inspire someone else just so much as it doesn't inspire me when other people say, hey, I haven't shaved my legs for 2 weeks. Congratulations. Or I went on a date today and it was great. Congratulations. I'm also not in your face or those faces saying, hey, why is your issue so minimal compared to mine? How dare you have fun while the world is burning? Maybe I think we should be reassessing what we're trying to sell here. You don't even stay on topic in your video, referencing the last video that I posted, which is going to be right here. I find it interesting because I start the video saying, welcome to Dwell On It. And as I've mentioned at the beginning of this episode, where I take your questions and answer them. Typically they come out of a grab bag and they get drawn randomly, so who knows what the mix of questions will be. I even had the foresight in the last episode to say, hey, I'm going to take some questions that I received from other individuals, and then I'm going to address something that happened in the city which is important. So I even shared the actual schedule. If you missed that, I don't think that's me not being on topic. I think you missed the agenda. You're talking about some city council and nobody cares. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to what's been happening in the US lately, but there's a little bit of a political crisis happening right now. And if you don't care about what is happening in politics, that's a you problem, not a me problem. You're right that nobody cares. That's the problem. You spoke about exercise routines before talking about city council approval again. What even is this? Welcome to Dwell On It, a series where I answer your questions about my lived experience as a trans woman. That's what Dwell On It is. The issue here is you aren't talking about trans issues. What are trans issues? What are trans issues any different than lesbian issues? What are trans issues? Define trans issues. Define issues that are exclusive to trans individuals. I can absolutely say that there are issues where trans individuals have a significantly higher experience rate with them. I could talk about issues that certainly appear higher on the agenda for trans individuals. Any issue that a trans person deals with is also an issue for a cis person who chooses to be an ally. So tell me, please, what are trans issues? And as a matter of fact, one of the values of something like Dwell On It is it gives an opportunity to humanize the conversation, to show that trans individuals are beyond the stereotype whom you expect trans people to be. That's a you expectation, not an us representation. A good deal of what you're posting does not relate to lesbians. Interesting. Many trans individuals are lesbians, therefore trans topics can resonate with transgender lesbians. And again, what are the things that lesbians care about? Is there a lesbian checklist that you must satisfy these values to be a lesbian? Because I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of lesbians out there with many diverse interests and many diverse values. Some believe in social justice and some believe in video games. Some like to work out and some like to binge eat. Some like coffee, some like tea, some like cats, some like dogs, some like work, some like art. What are lesbian issues? I'm a lesbian and I like my nails done long. Is that a lesbian issue? Nails? Do I need to have short nails to prove that I'm a lesbian? What are lesbian issues if not for you saying that your definition of lesbian is cisgender, heterosexual. And that's a you issue. That's you being exclusionary. Suppose you have lesbian-specific content, or, one of the titles of your videos is something to do with left-handedness. I'm gonna put that video right there as well. Remember the whole trans erasure thing? The reason why I used left-handedness as an example is because, one, it piques the curiosity in discussions such as right now. Hi, thank you for validating the reason why I did that. And second, is it gives a better understanding about how trans erasure is happening in front of us, which parallels the experience of left-handed individuals. If you haven't seen that video yet, please check it out, because you will learn a very good lot about what is happening in the world right now. And as a lesbian, if that does not frustrate you about the erasure that is happening, regardless if you're cisgender or transgender, you should be putting your effort into the politics, not into the me. Did you even read my comment or blank out as soon as someone criticized you and went, oh no, transphobe? If you had, you realize I watched the video in particular because I referenced the content. No, you referenced most of the content because you certainly missed a lot of the important parts, like the beginning explaining what the content is that got criticized. But again, I digress. And do I blank out? No, I don't blank out when someone criticizes me. Existing is being criticized. Imagine what life would be like if I was just completely blank to everything around me because everyone was choosing to be hostile or critical, right? What type of life would that be like? I address what's actually relevant is what it is. I'm so sorry that if you don't like the fact that you don't have substance or meaningfulness in some of the stuff you have to say, but validating ignorance isn't exactly a pastime of mine. Most people are not against the fact you are a trans advocate. You have so much innocence. I wish I could have it. That's so adorable. Most people are against the fact, by the way, that I'm a trans advocate, right? You just kind of take a look at the statistics of how many people are actually accepting to trans individuals, how many people actually help advocate with trans individuals, and so on. The amount of people in my life who I have lost personally because they have walked away from me because they feel that I am too loud. They want me to tone it down. They want me to go ahead and get to their level of silence. That's not conducive with people being accepting. That's not conducive with people appreciating me being a trans advocate. That's people thinking that what's happening in the world right now isn't important enough to care about. Your innocence and your ignorance is so endearing, and I truly wish that I was able to live a life like that. There are people on here who are, though. We don't appreciate information that doesn't seem to interest us. I noticed. And going back to what I was saying earlier, an inclusive place to talk about issues important to us, dispense wisdom, and swap stories. Is it about sharing things that are endearing to the loudest gatekeepers? Is that what it is? There are many things in many times, in many places, in many spaces that people say or do something that don't please me. But guess what? Either I'm on my phone and I just swipe, right? You do that, right? All 3 inches, right? All whole 3 inches being like, well, okay, disinterest. Oh, that's it. Off I go, right? Off I go. Or I just use my mouse on my computer and I scroll up, right? And then it's gone after a second. Weird. Because things that just don't interest me, I just move past it. Maybe it's a unique skill that I'm able to have. The ability to manage the fact that other people have interests that are different than mine, have different priorities than mine. But what you're trying to say is you want people to cater to you. And that is why trans individuals rarely feel a sense of belonging. They are told that they are too much. They are told that they're too weird or different or wrong or loud or blah, 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 blah. Too many trans individuals get silenced by people who have what they want. And because they got theirs, that's the finish line. Don't worry, anyone else. There's no other finish line because me, the cisgender, heterosexual lesbian, I got mine. I got my feminism. So anyone else who wants their own that looks a little different than mine, no. You're too much. Let's start talking about putting our faces in vaginas tonight because that's what being a lesbian is, right? My issues might not match yours, but your issues are just as valid to mine. Unfortunately, it seems that my issues are not valid to yours. And if you truly support trans individuals, you'll take half a second and hear us instead of telling us we're wrong. Because if we rewind, let's say, 60 years, far too many women were being told that they were wrong. What they want is unnecessary. What they want is not deserved. Why do trans individuals have to go through all the same stuff that women have and continue to go through, if not for the fact that TERFs are the ones stopping equality? TERFs are the ones interrupting equity, and TERFs are the ones suppressing justice. Y'all got yours. right? But let's just move on. I follow many trans creators and enjoy the content they produce. The formatting of your posts is very much like MLM. It comes across as very marketed and gimmicky, which is a turnoff for many people. The irony of it all. What is TikTok if not for attention-grabbing sensationalism within the attention span of a newt? That is what TikTok caters to. And yes, MLM is frustrating. Who likes it? Well, I can actually say many people do. Why do you think MLM succeeds if not for its format and platform? Therefore, if it is a model that proves successful, regardless of your feeling about it, is it wrong to mirror values of it to gain success? Heaven forbid that an individual recognizes a technique that gets attention and uses it. But hey, you keep enjoying your TikToks. So since some jerks had to be transphobic to you, I'm guessing that dealing with anything else will look transphobic. I'd rather say it like this. Since some jerks were transphobic and bystanders chose to not use their privilege to stop it and instead allow it to fester and get amplified and create harm, the consequence of your inaction, the consequence of you enabling a space for hate is something that you have to own, not me to navigate. If you create a space for hate and I continue to stand proud because I am confident of who I am. I own my space. I belong where I want to be. And I operate my life believing that I am going to own every footprint I put my own shoes into. And if you created a space that enabled harm and hostility and didn't use your privilege to shut it down, everything that happens after that is a byproduct of your enablance of hate, not my confidence and my integrity and my belief and my right to belong. Let's talk about suppression. No, I'm not offering help. It's fostering some negative feelings because the sub isn't super active. Okay, so what you're saying is because other people aren't engaged with their values, you want me to tone mine down. You want people to shut up because other people aren't speaking up enough. I'm going back to the reason of this entire video to share what life experience is like as a trans individual. And I'm a loud one who's owning my space because other people don't have the ability to get as loud as I do. And there are people who are like, well, you're talking all the time, you're sharing stuff all the time, you're active, or you're engaged, or you want this, or you're trying to promote that, or blah, 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 blah. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to just go sit in a corner and do nothing and not interrupt your little day? Oh, because you can't do this? That's right, you can't do this, right? You can't just do this, you can't just move on, right? You can't move on with your life? Is that what it is? You just can't move on with your life? That's a you problem. Telling someone who's passionate about their values to shut up is oppression. It's not like someone's walking into your life and telling you that your values are unimportant. Hey, stop baking a cake because no one likes your stupid cakes. Stop crocheting. You suck at crocheting. Stop crocheting. Stop playing video games, right? No one ever plays games with you, so just stop playing video games. Stop asking people to play video games when nobody wants to play video games with you. Stop playing video games. Tell me how that's any different. You not appreciating how a trans person is passionate for their life is a you problem. You not appreciating how a trans person is passionate about the lives of other marginalized individuals around them, that's a you problem. You not appreciating the fact that a trans person is trying to make a better world for them, their peers, and you, that's a you problem, not a trans person's problem. Silencing the voice of someone who cares to create change, especially when for the last who knows how many years, a lot more voices were far too complicit than they had any right to be, that's a you problem. I'm going to wrap up on this one. This one's going a little longer, so let's just do the outros super quick, super fast. If you like the content, please like. If you want to make sure other people hear the message, please share. If you want to make sure they see more content on at least a weekly basis, then please hit subscribe. In the description are 2 links to fundraisers. One is Run for Women and one is for Walk for MD. Run for Women supports women's mental health and women's wellness programs. And in the one that I'm participating in, it's out of Mood Disorders Association in Manitoba. So please make sure to jump in there and help me reach my goal of $1,411. And the other fundraiser, of course, is Walk for MD. That's supporting Canadians who are experiencing neuromuscular disorders. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, that it's also supporting their families, their support systems. And then on both, it's for the research and the advocacy and so on as well, to make sure that those programs work the best that they can for the people who need them the most. So please, $1,411 is the goal for both. Jump in the description, click a link on either of them, do your donation, get a tax receipt for that, help out, please. Remember, there's only 1 month left, and hitting those goals is really important to me. And also letters for trans kids, especially with a video like this. I hope this inspires you to recognize trans individuals are under attack from people from all corners of the universe, and we need you to help ensure that trans individuals can grow up healthy, safe, and with a sense of belonging. Please do that. Watch that video as I mentioned earlier. Please check it out. Your voice is really important, so please make sure to share. In the description as well is a link to a call to action with New Mode, and what that is it's encouraging elected officials, political leaders in your area to improve and optimize the corporate social responsibility of the businesses, organizations, and companies in your community, in your neighborhood, in your area, so that they are working to be as equitable as possible to help improve the quality of living of the lives of the individuals that those organizations are in, and not only just the budget of the organization. Please make sure to take a moment. It's about 14 seconds is one time I've done that submission as well. Click the link, name, email address, postal code, hit send. Everything else is done, and that gets sent off with a pre-made letter, and it of course always sends a message to the mayors of Winnipeg and Toronto as well. I think that's wrapping everything up. Otherwise, make sure to take a look at my channel if you haven't seen any of the shorts that I've uploaded lately. And then also, as I mentioned a couple bits ago, there's still a project I'm working on. It is a large project. I got delayed with some other projects, as I mentioned. The city council thing took me obviously a little more time than I expected, and the letters for trans kids was a project that was really important for me to get done as well. So those did kind of interrupt a little bit of my time, and this experience too, of course, is now injected just a little bit of a difference. Please make sure to stay subscribed, stay tuned, stay updated, and otherwise for now, let's just wrap it up. So I hope you have a great rest of your night. Have a great rest of your week, as I always love to say. I'll talk to you later.